Welcome to the 4th Smart Port Challenge launch event by Peers Anyone for Innovation Ecosystem Reimagined at Blocks Anyone. I'm Ning and this is Jessica, and we'll be hosting you this afternoon.
Hello, friends and partners in Singapore and around the world. I hope you're keeping well and ready for today's session. It's a short and sharp 1-hour program with a panel discussion taking place, and we will also be sharing more about Smart Port Challenge. Stay tuned to find out about Singapore's startup ecosystem and the ways that startups are making waves in maritime Singapore. The panel discussion is live, so do participate via the Zoom webinar Q&A or Facebook comments.
And if you have any questions about Smart Port Challenge, do type it into the chat function and we will be addressing them along the way. Now let's first hear from our guest of honor, Mr. Chee Hong Tat, Senior Minister of State for the Ministry of Transport. SMS Chief, please.
Professor Freddie Boy, Deputy President, Innovation and Enterprise, NUS. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for attending the virtual launch of Smart Port Challenge 2021. Maritime Singapore has remained resilient during the pandemic. We have responded well to the driving forces shaping the industry, disruption to global supply chains, digitalization, and decarbonization. The Port of Singapore continues to be a reliable and efficient port. In 2020, amidst overseas port closures, shipping delays, and container shortfalls, the container throughput at our port fell slightly by 0.9%. But we have regained the momentum since the second half of last year, and it has continued this year. Container throughput from January to May 2021 grew by 4.6% compared to the same period in 2020 and increased by 3.9% compared to the same period in 2019, before the pandemic. I'm encouraged by the positive development and would like to thank our workers, companies, and partners for their resilience and working well together to achieve this outcome. Neither COVID-19 nor the Suez Canal incident earlier this year prevented us from growing our port operations. Our International Maritime Centre offers ship owners and operators a one-stop marketplace for a variety of maritime services. In 2020, amidst the pandemic, we attracted 11 new shipping groups to Singapore and worked with 8 maritime companies to expand their operations here. The investment pipeline remains healthy. From January to May 2021, 5 maritime companies have expanded or established new operations in Singapore under the support of the Maritime and Port Authority. This strong performance is testament to the trust that maritime companies place in Singapore as a global hub port and international maritime center. But we must not rest on our laurels. We should ride on this momentum to build even stronger capabilities and position ourselves to grow further and be ready for the future. At the Committee of Supply earlier this year, I laid out our vision to create a 3I Maritime Singapore ecosystem, one which is integrated, innovative, and inclusive. We are making progress on all 3 fronts. Today, I'll focus on innovation in the area of maritime technology, or marine tech for short. During the pandemic, we have leveraged technology to implement contactless cargo and bunkering operations, track cargo, and provide telemedicine services for seafarers. We can expect demand for such technological solutions to continue increasing, including after the pandemic. This is the 5th year that MPA and NUS Enterprise are organizing the Smart Port Challenge. By bringing together problem statements and solutions for the maritime sector, it's become a key pillar of our efforts to develop a strong marine tech sector in Singapore. Marine tech is a fast-growing area with a promising future. Singapore is well placed to develop this sector as we have strengths in both maritime and technology. Successful marine tech solutions that are developed and piloted here can be scaled up and exported overseas. Today, I'm pleased to launch a total of 17 challenge statements for the Smart Port Challenge 2021. These challenge statements cover top-of-the-mind concerns in the industry, from port operations, shipping, sustainability, to crew safety, and supply chain management. Automation and remote operations feature strongly in this year's challenge statements, including automated cleaning of vessels, cargo identification, monitoring of emissions from cargo and ballast tanks, and tracking of mental and physical well-being of crew. These technologies are key to a safer and more productive maritime sector of the future. Our Smart Port Challenge alumni have taken their solutions further. They've made good use of the support provided by the Pier 71 platform, and they have done well. For example, 7 startups from last year's Smart Port Challenge have been awarded grant funding to develop pilot projects with their industry partners. And this is the next step to developing solutions at scale. They will be applying innovative solutions in areas such as remote vessel inspection and ensuring safety and efficiency in container terminal operations. One of these companies is BX, which was a winning team last year. I remember the excellent presentation by Ms. Grace Chia, CEO of BX, and I was delighted to present Grace and her teammates with the award. BX specializes in autonomous underwater robots to inspect piers and vessels using technology developed together with the Advanced Robotics Center at NUS. This can be cheaper, safer, and more efficient than using divers. BX is now expanding their use case to inspect infrastructure at floating solar farms. I'm confident that their technology can be applied to many other areas, both in Singapore and overseas. Smart Port Challenge alumni are also attracting funding and expanding solutions for the global market. Podcast, a finalist from 2018, developed predictive visibility for global container movements. This enables shipping companies and shippers to improve productivity by up to 30% and reduce supply chain costs by up to 15%. Podcast now has 15 employees, including data scientists and software developers. It will expand its platform into an intelligent control tower for global supply chains and is working to secure a second round of venture capital funding to support this growth. To build a vibrant marine tech ecosystem, developing challenges for startups is not enough. Any city or port authority can launch its own challenge. To differentiate Singapore from the competition, we must also create the right conditions to translate good ideas into scalable solutions and enable promising startups to grow into viable businesses. To achieve these outcomes, we must provide marine tech companies with access to markets, technology, funding, and talent at each stage of their growth. First, access to markets. As the top container transshipment port in the world, we are a prime testbed for new innovations. Maritime companies in our International Maritime Center act as demand drivers and identify innovation opportunities for startups. This creates an environment where startups can iterate quickly with end users, facilitating product market fit, commercialization, and scale. Second, access to technology. There are strong links between research institutes and startups in marine tech, facilitated by the Singapore Maritime Institute. This enables startups to tap on patents and intellectual property developed for key maritime-related technologies to further strengthen and differentiate their solutions. Many good ideas originate from our research centers, but these ideas can only be put into action and translated into concrete outcomes if they are brought out of the lab and into the commercial world. Third, access to funding. MPA is enhancing support for startups to pilot and scale their projects through the recent establishment of the Mint Startup Grant, which is part of the $10 million earmarked to drive the growth of marine tech companies here. Last year, MPA and Enterprise Singapore's Seeds Capital partnered 6 venture capital groups or VCs to provide a total of $50 million in co-investment funds for promising marine tech startups. Today, I'm pleased to announce 3 new VC partners as part of the Pier 71 platform. IMC Ventures, Motion Ventures, and MOL Plus have a wealth of expertise in shipping, technology, decarbonization, and beyond. Their involvement will ensure that solutions developed are useful and scalable to the industry. Collectively, the new VC partners will provide a further $30 million of potential funding for marine tech startups. Lastly, but importantly, access to talent. Innovation is most likely to happen at the intersection of different ideas, skills, and perspectives. This is why we must remain open to innovators and entrepreneurs from around the world and welcome them to set up their business in Singapore or conduct their research test bedding here. We will also support the continuous skills development of our local maritime workforce and grow a strong Singapore core for the industry. This requires the tripartite partners to collaborate closely in carrying out industry transformation and helping one another to attract, train, and develop our workers to be ready for new exciting opportunities. The importance of tripartism has been demonstrated and reinforced during this crisis, such as when government, unions, and employers came together to work out protocols for safe crew change last year. We are also working with our tripartite partners to build workforce capabilities and attract more Singaporeans to join us in growing Maritime Singapore. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we are adding a new area to our tripartite collaboration. MPA will partner employers, the Singapore Shipping Association, and our unions to implement Company Training Committee or CTC initiatives to help maritime SMEs map out their digitalization and training plans for their workers. MPA and the Singapore Maritime Officers Union will organize a series of discussions with maritime companies. These conversations will focus on the company's digitalization journeys and how to equip their employees with new skills for the future and attract more Singaporeans to join the maritime sector. In my roles at both Ministry of Transport and NTUC, I'm delighted to see this collaboration take off. It builds on the strong tripartite partnership that we enjoy in the maritime sector, and I firmly believe it will allow us to build stronger capabilities to be ready for the future. This is like adding a new propeller to our ship so that it can go faster and sail further. Ladies and gentlemen, as we embark on this year's Smart Port Challenge, I hope that our partners, corporates, VCs, startups, and the research community will join us in this journey of discovery and adventure. Together, we can create a bright future for marine tech in Singapore and position ourselves as a hub for ideas, capital, investments, and talent, the Silicon Valley of marine tech. A place where dreams can become reality, passion can develop into possibilities, and ideas can translate into solutions that will change the world and shape our collective future. Thank you.
Thank you, SMS Chee. Pier 71 is co-founded by the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, as well as NUS Enterprise from the National University of Singapore. Let's hear from Professor Freddie Boy what NUS Enterprise has in store for Pier 71.
Mr. Chee Hong Tat, Senior Minister of State, Ministry of Transport, Ms. Kwa Lei Hun, Chief Executive, MPA, Mr. Kenneth Lim, Assistant Chief Executive for Industry, partners and entrepreneurs, both from overseas and Singapore. Today's 4th Smart Port Challenge by Pier 71 has 17 innovation opportunities from 21 maritime organizations covering areas in ports, shipping, crew safety, well-being and training, maritime services, logistics, and green technologies. More than ever before, companies need to innovate rapidly, and your speed in adopting and exploiting new technologies will be critical to your success and even survival. The ability to take new technologies out of the lab and launch new products and services at startup speed will set apart the winners and the losers. NUS today probably contributes one of the largest number of deep tech startups with programs like the Graduate Research Innovation Program or GRIP, G-R-I-P. The recent Breathonics startup, which was among the first in the world to receive regulatory approval for screening COVID-19 using a single breath, was created by the GRIP program. It is already being used to screen for COVID at the Tuas checkpoint 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then there is BEX, the 2020 SPC First Prize winner, another startup by GRIP, which develops autonomous underwater vehicles and unmanned surface vessels for inspections. Yet another GRIP startup is Dravam, the 2019 SPC First Prize winner, which detects and analyzes fluid contamination real-time throughout the entire bunker flow transfer. Here at NUS, we have a proven model for commercializing new technologies developed in our research lab. Our model is based on two unique elements: world-class intellectual property and a proprietary method for launching deep technology startups in the fastest time. The NUS Technology Access Program, or TAP, will soon start in 2021. And this will also provide you with an exclusive access to our IP to increase your competitive edge. We have already kickstarted our recent Master of Science in Venture Creation in December 2020. It is an immersive one-year graduate degree program that combines experiential learning with the academic rigor of Asia's top university. Designed to transport mindsets and accelerate translation of ideas into solutions, the program targets aspiring entrepreneurs wanting to launch new ventures with success by providing mentorship in business development and, very important, access to NUS IP and technologies, as well as opportunities to network for market access. Pier 71 and Smart Port Challenge is part of NUS' larger effort in developing deep tech and industry-relevant programs. We welcome entrepreneurs, innovators, and startups far and wide to access our ideas and technologies and to be part of NUS enterprise ecosystem and Pier 71's community. So may I wish you a very successful day for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. I hope you're excited to join Pier 71 and Smart Port Challenge after hearing what SMSG and Professor Freddie Boy have said.
That's right. So a recent report commissioned by Inmarsat, the Trade 2.0, studies the role of maritime startups and the impact of digitalization to the maritime industry. We're really excited about all the changes technology is bringing to this sector.
Yeah, and startups from Smart Port Challenge have embarked on POCs with corporate partners for a wide range of projects, including areas in remote monitoring and autonomous operations, making data more readily available for efficiency improvement, sustainability, using very small yet nimble drones for inspection in confined spaces and hazardous locations. All these developments are only possible when various players come together. And let's hear from our panel how different stakeholders will be influencing the growth of innovation in maritime Singapore. The panel discussion will be moderated by Brian Koh, Director of Corporate Partnerships from NUS Enterprise. He will be joined by Yi Han, Director of Innovation, Technology and Talent Development from MPA. Goh Keng Ho, Business Development Director from Inmarsat. Sean Horn, General Partner from Motion Ventures, and Keith Ng, Founder and CEO of Performance Rotors, also an alumnus of SmartPort Challenge in 2019.
And do remember that you can participate in the discussion by submitting your questions and comments using the Q&A function found at the bottom of your screen or via the Facebook comments if you're watching through Facebook Live. So now with that, over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Jessica and Ning, and welcome everyone, our partners, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I also want to welcome our distinguished panelists, and we really look forward to the next half an hour to gain their insights on the Singapore maritime innovation landscape. Let's dive straight into discussion. And this discussion that we talk about in the Singapore maritime innovation landscape really came about also because Inmarsat came out with a report paper on startup and innovation ecosystem Trade 2.0 Singapore. And let me just hand the session over to Keng Ho, who can then give us some key insights to share from this study itself. Keng Ho, please.
Hi, thanks, Brian, and a great good afternoon to everyone. Very happy to be able to share a bit more about what we have done in the study. So Trade 2.0 is a series of our studies looking at the status or the state of the maritime industry across many different segments. So we have actually also done one particular one in Japan, and we'll be rolling out other similar reports. So the main gist of the report is really to highlight Singapore's unique position and unique situation. So one of it, of course, to keep it simple, I will probably highlight three main areas so that you can get a quick understanding of the report if you have not read it yet. So one, of course, is Singapore's uniqueness in our innovation advantage. So one of it, of course, is always mentioned, our bridge between East and West. The other one is also a very large number of immigrants and that the culture of innovation. And of course, the power of proximity. We are very close to a lot of markets and a lot of emerging trends in the space, which allow us to prosper. The second one is the uniqueness of Singapore, especially with a setup like Pier 71 and the Smart Port Challenge. We think, and we are very much in line with Pier 71, that is really an excellent accelerator or excellent bait for innovation and progress and development. And of course, also support from the government, such as the Hunt for Deep Tech with the kind of funding. And also the presence of a lot of early adopters, such as example, Eastern Pacific Shipping, which we think is quite forward in their looking, in their perspective. And also lastly, the third point is that the space is also growing. So the maritime industry is also growing, especially in the space of the merging between maritime and technology. And also the efforts by the government and also different organizations such as the Maritime Decarbonization Center, I think are evidence of that kind of growth and the kind of commitment that we see. So on those 3 points, we see that very uniqueness situation that created the startup magnet in Singapore. So we continue to see potential for that growth. And in the report, we also highlighted a few very interesting startups that we have looked at, we have monitored. And I mean, the best part is definitely to take a quick read and to let us know your comments and your feedback. Yeah, over back to you, Brian.
Keng Ho, thank you so much. And one of the things I like about the report, as you started off, you actually used the story of David and Goliath, and Singapore being the David here to have won giant Goliath. I thought was so apt, and although sometimes I'm not sure are we really the David in that sense, but certainly the analogy is very useful. Let me move on to MP, and I'd like to direct now the question to Yi Han. Has the vision and the milestones of MPA to grow a vibrant maritime innovation system in Singapore change? And if yes, how has this changed and what else needs to be done? If you could give us more insight in this. Ihan, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. Those calling in and viewing this video from Singapore as well as our international audience. Welcome to this to the launch of the Smart Port Challenge 2021. So on Brian's question itself, I would say that the innovation ecosystem continues to evolve and mature. I think as what you have heard from our guest of honor, Minister Chee, the Singapore Maritime Innovation Ecosystem is supported by a very rich maritime cluster. We have more than 150 international shipping groups, more than 5,000 maritime companies situated in Singapore. And we have a very structured way to curate and bring in the various different innovation stakeholders to come into Singapore to participate in this innovation process. So this could be through the maritime innovation process, including this Smart Port Challenge, as well as call for proposals that we can bring in to link demand users with solution solver groups together. What I would say in terms of what has changed or continue to evolve in Singapore will really be how we continue to enhance the innovation infrastructure. So previously, we have launched the Maritime Innovation Lab in Singapore. The Innovation Lab allows the startups and technology players to access industry data in the port in real-time basis, allowing them to provide good solutions that can allow them to provide ways to solve some of those pressing industry issues. This is also further complemented and supported by the launch of our Maritime Data Hub a few years ago. As you can probably hear from our announcement at the Singapore Maritime Week just back in April this year, we have also launched the Maritime Drone Estate, which further helps technology players, startups to find innovative ways to deliver new solutions, even as the regulatory landscape is being developed and enhanced, so that innovation and regulations does not impede some of this necessary innovation development work. Moving beyond that, we also have built up a richer ecosystem whereby the environment is now no longer limited to government related fundings or also funding from only a few maritime companies. We have brought in a diverse range of maritime accelerators and incubators to join us within this space in the maritime sector. As you have mentioned earlier, players like Eastern Pacific Shipping, we also have PSA and players like Rainmaking who have anchored some of these activities in the first place. Moving beyond that, we are already seeing other venture capital players and corporate venture capital companies such as IMC Ventures, MOL Plus, and Motion Venture coming into play. So we really see the ecosystem being enhanced and maturing over time. And as what we will think, what is going to be our key development here is really that, as what the minister has mentioned, we hope to grow Singapore into the Silicon Valley for marine tech. Marine tech being our new hype word for maritime technology. So we really hope to be able to attract more players within Singapore as well as internationally to come and participate in this innovation journey with us in Singapore. Yeah. So that's all I have for now. Thanks, Brian, and back to you.
Yeah. Ihan, thank you so much. And yes, there's a lot happening in this whole landscape in what SMSG has said in marine tech itself. We're all very excited about this whole area itself. Just for the audience here, I just want to remind you that if you have any questions, please post your questions to the chat function. I see a question and I just want to quickly try and answer them in between if we can afford the time. So the question is really, in the Smart Port Challenge 2021, only for companies or individuals as well. I would really say, well, we encourage companies to come in, but if you're interested, do put your name in and we'll see how you can be involved in that sense. Now, coming back to some of discussions over here, SMS Chee mentioned having the right environment. And he talked about the 3 areas: access to market, access to technology, and then access to funding. One of the driving force to fuel a good startup ecosystem is investments. So what more better than to get Sean from Motion Ventures, to give us a perspective. What is Motion Ventures' outlook on the investment in the maritime related startups in Singapore, and what attracts you currently, and what is also lacking? If you give us some of your insight. Sean, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. First off, really nice to see so many people here today. I'm really happy to be here. I think in short, my take, it's fantastic, right? And I'll tackle outlook on investment in a couple of ways. So I think the first way is from an investor perspective, and then I'll also talk from a startup perspective. So from an investor perspective, we're seeing more investors look at Singapore for maritime startups, right? So for example, we had IMC Ventures, a Singapore company starting up a venture fund to invest in maritime startups here. And then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, internationally, we have MOL Plus, which is the venture arm of MOL, setting up here and partnering with the ecosystem to drive more collaboration here in Singapore. And I think this is amazing because that means there's more capital flow in Singapore, and that will naturally attract more talent for sure. From a startup perspective, we have a Singapore company called Greywing that just graduated from the prestigious Y Combinator, right? So Greywing, it's one of the first maritime company in the last few years to graduate from YCOM. And for those that are not familiar with YCOM, it's one of the best accelerators in the world based out of Silicon Valley, where they've accelerated Airbnb, Dropbox, and Flexport. So a couple of things to note here with this. One of the best global accelerator, YCOM, that can pick from any sector is now paying attention to the maritime space. One of the best global accelerator that can pick from any geographical location is picking from Singapore, right? So to me, that's like a really big indicator that we're going to see more talents coming in. We're going to see more solution in this space. And then Brian, you asked me a little bit about the attraction and what's lacking. So the attraction here is not surprising at all, right? There's amazing support from the Singapore government. Enterprise Singapore seeds capital, supporting Motion Ventures as a co-investment partner, and also other people as well to spur growth capital into Singapore. The Decarbonization Center by MPA is a huge attraction for corporates and also in the public sector, which are natural consumers of startup technology in the space, which in turn spins the wheel to attract more startups. And so I love the vibrancy so much. What I'll say is that what I think we can do next is to create a maritime global framework on where we see the industry going and what's needed to solve that. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, we can lead the way in terms of aligning how different countries, different organizations globally can come together and have the same goal and solve similar problems. Secondly, it's to bring clarity to other entrepreneurs that are outside of the maritime space on exactly what is needed to tackle problems here, right? And so the more clarity they have, the more they know if it's something they can do and embark on. So the Smart Port Challenge is an amazing way to do it. It's phenomenal. It's so good at defining problem statements with the corporates and also the MPA and many other organizations. I think we can go much deeper in sharing our knowledge of the type of technologies that have been tried for a problem statement, but maybe haven't worked out, or maybe had subpar outcome. And we can sort of crowdsource that sort of information and share it globally to get entrepreneurs outside the maritime space to attempt. And so I think this cross-industry innovation will be extremely important moving forward, in my view.
Sean, thank you so much. And wow, that's wonderful to hear about the framework. And certainly, MPA and US Enterprise is developing and expanding the current framework that we already have into looking into some of the areas that you've already mentioned. In fact, I kind of like your example about YCOM and how that intersection between what YCOM is looking in maritime tech as well as in the location of Singapore. That's wonderful to hear. I want to move on to Keith. Keith has been a part of our earlier cohort of the Pier 71's program, and not originally from the maritime industry. Keith, if you could give us a bit of your experience thus far, both in terms of your challenges as well as your opportunities. Thanks, Kee.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. I think it's fantastic what we are doing here. Coming from as an outsider, right? The world of maritime is very confusing, if you like, for us in the beginning, because there's a lot of players involved. Yeah. For example, you take a vessel, you have owner, you have charterers, you have the management people, and then you've got within those organization, you've got different people that you need to talk to as well, for a startup to get a foot in. Yeah. So for outsider company like ours, there is a learning curve that we need to overcome, if you like. But what we are doing down here right now, I think it's really fantastic because, as some of you may know, I recently just came back from the Netherlands because I went there to open a new office of ours. And what we are doing here for innovation actually caught their attention. And the innovation people over there, they tell me that they lost some attractive startups to Singapore. And they are sore about it, but they are quite impressed as well. So I think what we are doing is getting attention of the world. There is no better place to start. I think from as an innovation company ourselves, we looked at what today's technology can offer. We see that in maritime, there is still a lot of things that can be done, yeah, compared to how things are done normally, manually in the past. A lot of coordination work, a lot of phone calls, a lot of what ifs. But now you have AI take over, you have all sorts of real-time information that you can work on. So there are a lot of opportunities as far as from what we can see as a startup. I think as a startup as well, a concern would be, I think it's universal with all startups, right? There will be runway, and then there will be revenue opportunities. So for runway, I think now we are doing a great thing, as mentioned by the speakers before, that we have a lot of venture capitalists now sitting in. IMC formed a new one as well. Yeah. And it's through this platform, for at least for us, we met one of our investor is actively taking part in Pier 71 as well. I just saw our friend from Vopak inside the list of attendees. So this is open. Everybody is here. It's the right place for any startup to be. It's a huge, it's a very big leg up, if you like.
Keith, thank you so much. And you mentioned the right words as a startup. The runway and revenue and all these, because ultimately these are things that will make a difference for startups.
Indeed. And as besides the revenue as well, I think this is a good place because different parties are here. It serves as a very initial matchmaking process, if you like, yeah, with the problem statements being shared and the startups giving their solutions. So it's great.
Anyway, congratulations on setting up your Netherlands office, because one of the elements that we want to see in this whole ecosystem is not just to remain in Singapore, but the ability to internationalize and globalize in that sense. One of the elements that you mentioned earlier, and this has been discussed on the whole area, is that whole element of community, because we don't want to remain on our own, but we have to be integrated with the global scene itself. So let me just put this question back to Yi-Han. What do you think is the next milestone to achieve for the maritime innovation community in Singapore? What are these areas that you think and see as pertinent in moving forward?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, in terms of the next milestones of what we can expect for the maritime innovation scene, I would say that I echo some of the points brought up by the earlier panelists. In particular, I think what is important is that for this whole maritime innovation process to grow and sustain and further amplify, it is important that it is not constrained just within the community, the maritime community itself, but really how we can bring this to a wider audience beyond Singapore at the international level. So I think that there's a lot of interest and partnerships that we've been building up with the different players beyond Singapore, be it in Europe, in China, and the likes of that. So the interest is really to see how we can bring in more stakeholders, more venture capital players into this. And beyond the maritime sector itself, we are increasingly looking at the supply chain players as some of these digitalization efforts string more of these stakeholders more closely together than before. And I think, as mentioned by some of the panelists earlier as well, we are also looking at going beyond just innovating in the areas of digital technology and solution, but going very strongly in the areas of sustainability. In particular, we are looking at how some of these innovation approaches could be directed to enable the industry to decarbonize, to meet some of the targets of the International Maritime Organization. So we really welcome and hope to hear from more of the industry on their requirements and challenges towards the maritime decarbonization statements, and also how we can bring on board more solver communities to come into this space as well. So on that note, we want to see how in the next phase of development, the startups and our R&D community, in particular our universities and our research centers based in Singapore and also partners abroad, can work together to bring some of this deep tech technology to translate them into viable commercial solutions that the industry can adopt. And on this track itself, I think we have taken some baby steps in the sense of also helping the startups to grow and progress. So as Minister has shared earlier in his opening address, we have launched the MINT startup scheme, helping the startups to be able to get access to funding to conduct their proof of concept development, as well as subsequently to scale up some of their solutions beyond to broader, bigger markets. So I would say these are some of the key areas that we are looking at as part of the next phase of our development. Thanks, Brian.
Ihan, thank you. Thank you for that insight into how the community plays an important role. I want to now come back to Keng Ho. Given the current pandemic situation, and how do you think the area of connectivity, internationalization, and globalization that we've been talking about, and I know IMASAT is doing a lot in this area, have on the impact to our Singapore maritime innovation landscape?
Thanks, Brian. Yes, definitely at the onset of pandemic, I think we quickly realized the importance of connectivity to maintain the links between the crew, the seafarers, together with their family, and also with operationally between the ships with the office. So at the onset of that, we of course started to look at what else we could do to help. And of course, very quick fix were how to support better call, how to support the use of video conferencing on limited bandwidth, and supporting them through our partners. So we built a ecosystem of what we call certified application providers. So through that, we hope to rope in more innovation and more specific digital solutions to help our customers as well as seafarers. So that's one approach we did. And as you can see, we have crafted some press release around that. We have worked with one partner called Beacon, which looks at telemedicine for the seafarers. So moving on, we are hoping to work with more partners and to bring up more efforts in terms of digitalization in the space. On that, we are happy that actually a lot of our partners are also graduates of the Smart Port Challenge, and they have participated actively in this space, which is why when the invite from Pier 71 to speak today, we were very happy because we see that there's a lot of alignment and a lot of synchronization between what we intend to do and what Singapore and Pier 71, as well as the larger Maritime Singapore, is trying to do. On the international part, we feel that Singapore is very well positioned because while we are in the APAC region and we are close to a lot of the major markets that are developing very strongly in terms of maritime and in terms of ship tech. So we see ship tech being a very large part of the growth in the maritime industry. So of course, you can look at other digital solutions, you can look at port technology, but we see ship tech having a lot of potential, but also ship tech having a lot of challenges that requires a lot of improvement and innovation in connectivity, connecting the ships, delivering maybe even IoT solutions and so forth. And the growth in areas such as this is quite rampant or quite fast in areas like Japan, Hong Kong, Korea, China as well, and Taiwan, and Singapore being sort of a midpoint between East and West, and also a very popular bunkering spot makes that whole thing very interesting, because you could have owners that are in Japan, but you realize that a lot of time they end up doing a lot of work in terms of technology or in terms of commissioning systems in Singapore because of the convenience of the period during bunkering and so forth. So while that is a very small point and a small thing, it sort of highlight, sort of like a very snapshot of really the value of Singapore as a midpoint between East and West, both physically and also, I mean, beyond physical, and also, how should I phrase it? Never mind, I shall not belabor that point. Yep. So yes, so that's all I have, Brian.
Yeah, Kingo, thank you so much. And yes, the whole element of internationalization is so important. We have a question here, Gabriel from TCNS, and his question is, he's curious about what the panel feels are biggest barriers to uptake of innovation. And many maritime companies have been around for many years. Do they view startups with apprehension? What can we do to help startups gain more credibility? I know this is a very big question actually for everyone, but if I could direct this to Keith, because you as a startup, if you could look at it from that perspective, give some insights, and then maybe at the concluding discussion that we have, if each of you can also give a perspective of what you see in this area itself. Keith, can I just direct this to you? Thank you.
I think this is a very hard question for me to answer. How do I prove? I mean, at the end of the day, what a startup can do or can't do, we have to be honest in the start, right? At the very beginning, to show what we can do and not try and wing it. When what we can do has been proven with one, for lack of better word, trial. Example, when we first came out, right? Somebody tried our solution, because drones is not a new thing. Before we came about, there were 101 drones company out there that claimed to do confined space flights, without GPS, without anything. So a lot of people has had bad experiences. When the drones come along, it fails, right? So it also takes for us, it takes that one or two company and say, okay, let's not give up yet. Let's give the startup a chance. Let them come and prove it. So once that door is open and we have done it, we have saved that party, reduce risk, reduce cost, reduce time for inspection and things like that. What we do then spreads out. People will hear about it, and it's very normal that, hey, if you save that company X amount of dollars, I want to have that benefit too. So can you please come and do it for us as well? So I think it is at the end of the day for the startup to just really work hard and grab the opportunity, prove yourself that your solution works and your solution benefits all stakeholders. It cannot be something that just benefits the startup and not the other stakeholders. It will not work. It is something for everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. And actually, you've done it. I mean, reason why I directed this question to you, I apologize to put you on the spot, but it is a difficult question. But I think because you have done it and you have, developed that credibility, not just with partners, but with the other stakeholders as well. So, once again, congratulations on your expansion. Time is running out, and this has gone so quickly. And but I want to, in our concluding statement, I mentioned earlier when we started off how the report, the IMASAT report, used the analogy of David and Goliath as a analogy of how Singapore has actually conquered the maritime innovation landscape. Coming back to that story, if many of you know this story, is David, when he went up to Goliath, he didn't want the armors and everything else. What he did was he just had 5 smooth stones and his sling, and then he won Goliath with just 1 shot. So if he started off with 5 stones, he's used 1. There's actually 4 more stones left. I want to put each of these stones to each one of you, the panelists, and tell me, with the remaining stones given to each of you, what would be the one thing needed to bring the Singapore maritime innovation landscape to the next level? Let me direct this first to maybe Sean, if you don't mind.
No, I'm happy to take it. Thanks for the really good question. If I had 1 stone, I think about how can we continue creating a strong, vibrant ecosystem, right? And then how do we define a strong, vibrant ecosystem, right? And I think it's largely really the density of the different clusters that the different panelists spoke about, whether it's startup, corporates, government, VCs, and then how connected these clusters are. So for example, Motion Ventures brings its own cluster, right? We have a cluster of corporates, we call it the corporate consortium, and then we see high engagement between our corporates and the startups. So the question I really want to tackle here is how can we combine our different ecosystems together, our different clusters? So how can I work with Ihan on Decop Center? How can I work with King Ho on the research? How can I work with Keith? And also beyond that, I think that would be kind of like my 1 shot at trying to make the ecosystem stronger to increase survivability of startups, and also which without a doubt will definitely attract more talent to solve difficult problems in this space.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, and certainly pulling everything together would be very important. Ihan, can I ask you what would you use that stone for?
Yeah, Brian, thanks. I would say that what we will want to do is really to see how we can broaden some of this innovation application and use cases, not just to serve, say, the maritime sector, but also to connect all the other related adjacent sector, bring together how the broader supply chain can be more efficient, be more connected, basically transforming and providing new business opportunities and creating new ways of conducting trade and shipping in fundamentally, I think, new ways, so that we level up some of these opportunities and activities that we can conduct. So I would say it's really to strengthen some of this collaboration, not just in terms of the quantity itself, but also the quality, and expanding the impact to reach a wider network of audience.
Jan, thank you. And certainly, we often say the maritime space itself in innovation is just not limited to the maritime space, but the link up with land transport, with air, and many other elements. So, that whole connectivity, we don't stand alone in that sense. So yes, thank you. Keith, can I just ask, what would you use as a startup, for that last stone?
I would use it to cause a ripple. I would like to attract the attention of all the other startups out there, because the reason being is that we can't do everything. I mean, the success that we have today is not Keith, right? It's the whole team that is there. But we are, as a startup, we are also limited in resources. We are limited in manpower, and we do not have the solutions for everything. And we do not want to overextend ourselves and to be able to have all this. I would love to use that stone to cast ripples so that all the startups can come together and say that, hey, we have part A, I have part B, that guy has part C, and together we form a consortium, and the solution that we can then provide to corporates, to end users, will be complete and whole, a turnkey solution, if you like, rather than being fragmented, like trying to do everything and being run over.
Thank you, Keith. And yes, really, as one of the things that I didn't get to ask you, which I wanted to ask from a startup viewpoint, how do we make this maritime tech space sexy in a sense? I think you've answered that question. Keng Ho, over to you. How would you use your last stone?
Yes, so I really like what Sean and Keith talk about. One is the collaborative nature of it, and also pulling in the strength of many different players to deliver something for the customer. So I would use that stone definitely to throw to have more collaborative arrangements between different players. It could be large corporates with startups, startups with startups, or even groups of any kind of combination, even with academia. Because this is also one of the fundamental principles that we have been doing with our certified applications provider scheme as an example of how we are pulling them in as a partner. So not necessarily with a very complex consortium agreement, but as a partner, and we introduce actually their solutions to our customers. So we see that the collaborative part, whether between two parties or more parties, is definitely very essential for in the maritime innovation to continue. And Keith rightly pointed out, the space is very complex. You know, you have ship owners, ship managers, charterers, and everyone has their own KPIs or their own interests to manage, and it's sometimes very hard to be very truly aligned together. So definitely, I want that stone to do that. Just like today, I chose this picture of the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. I hope that we'll write on Singapore's innovation success and make the castle run in less than 12 parsecs.
Keiko, thank you so much. And there seems to be a consensus right across on this whole thing of being connected together, collaborative, which actually speaks very much of the very point that when SMS Chee gave his opening remarks, and he talked about creating the 3 I's. Which is being integrated, being innovative, and being inclusive itself. And really, what all of you have mentioned really speaks of the 3 I's that we're talking about. So ladies and gentlemen, time is really running out. It's gone by so quickly, but we thank you for joining us for this SmartPort Challenge launch. And I want to, would you join me in thanking the panelists, Ihan, Sean, Keng Ho, and Keith. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian, and our panelists for that very insightful discussion. So you can download the Trade 2.0 Singapore Maritime Startup and Innovation Ecosystem Report and find out more. So we will be sharing more about SmartPort Challenge and how you can get involved. And SmartPort Challenge 2021 is brought to you by Pure 71 and TMD Ventures. It is also supported by Startup SG and initiated by Enterprise Singapore, the Economic Development Board, and the Singapore Shipping Association. 21 maritime organizations and partners have put up 17 innovation opportunities this year, covering areas in smart port, smart ship, crew safety, training and well-being, smart maritime services and logistics, as well as green technologies. So this year we have a few joint areas put up by several maritime corporates, and we also have new areas tackling ship supplies, insurance, and more. So beyond this 17, if we have promising solutions, as well as technologies in any of the other broad categories, do submit them under the open category too. And I believe we have one question from Baru, asking whether or not a startup can apply to multiple challenge statements. The answer is yes, but you would have to customize your proposal for that particular innovation opportunity. So let's say you are tackling 2, so we would expect 2 different applications with very customized solution to that problem statement. So Jessica, who should join SmartPort Challenge?
Yep, so if you can reimagine your technologies for applications in the maritime industry, or you're keen to explore new business opportunities in this very vibrant and growing market, SmartPort Challenge is the place for you. And that actually also brings me to a question we had earlier on from Raja Mohan asking, is SmartPort Challenge only for companies or can it be for individuals as well? So that's a great question. So we look at a range of criteria, such as the tech potential and also the team competency as a whole. So while you may not be incorporated as a company just yet, not to worry at all. It'd be best if you can come get as a team to submit your proposal, because it's not just about the tech, but it's also about the capability to deliver and execute and build the business as well. So I hope that answers your question. And so moving on then, so selected startups or teams will be invited to participate in a 6-week intense Accelerate program to network with maritime corporates, validate your product, receive mentoring from industry veterans and business experts, and gain access to resources made available by our program partners. This includes access to our VC partners' networks and expertise, access to lending resources, and co-working space of Peer 71, and access to the talent pool from universities. So for those who are keen to sign up, what's next, Ning?
Well, find out more about the 70 innovation opportunities from Peer 71's website. You'll have to submit your entries by the 10th of August. All the information can be found on our website at www.peer71.sg. And upon successful submission of your application, it will be evaluated by an expert panel as well as the participating corporate sponsors. Only shortlisted candidates will be invited to an interview, and we will unveil the Smart Port Challenge 2021 cohort in September.
And top finalists will be competing for cash prizes amounting to $18,000 at the grand finals in November. All finalists who compete for the program may also apply for the MPA grant. And this also again builds on to an earlier question we had in the panel about how we can help startups gain more credibility. So to build on the answer the panel gave, this grant is helpful for that. So while the Accelerate program helps you validate your ideas, the grant helps you take it further to do a proof of concept or to trial your solution with a maritime corporate. And of course, beyond the grant funding, we also continue to support our alumni in various ways, as SMS Chee shared earlier in his speech. This includes access to markets, funding, tech, talent, infrastructure, and data.
Well, make sure that you follow us on LinkedIn for the latest updates and mark your calendars as we deep dive into the innovation opportunities with the corporate partners. Well, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Stay safe and healthy.
Thanks, everyone. Until we see you again, sending love from Peer 71.
Bye.
Bye.